would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I live and work, the Gundungurra land and people. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I also want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which you, our listeners, are joining us from today. I recognise the deep connection that First Nations people have to this land, their enduring culture, and their commitment to the preservation and care for their country. This land was never ceded, and it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hey there, and welcome to this special bonus episode of Beyond the Surface. In these episodes, we take a break from the personal stories, and I get to chat with experts on all things related to religious trauma, cults, and deconstruction. These conversations are foundational and educational. They provide deeper insights and understanding into the complexities of the experiences we hear in the stories. Whether you're just beginning your journey, this is the first episode you're listening to, or maybe you're looking to expand your knowledge in general, these episodes are packed with valuable information that will help you navigate wherever you are. I'm your host, Sam, and this is Beyond the Surface. Welcome to this month's bonus session of Beyond the Surface. Today we are doing an episode all around deconstructing monogamy and exploring diverse relationship structures. So before we dive into it, I'm going to welcome our guest. So welcome, Anne.
Hi, Sam. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here today and talk about non-monogamy.
Yes. So, for a little bit of context for people, just to sort of like ground the episode, where in the world are you and what brings you to this space of diverse relationship structures, non-monogamy, and the intersection with religious trauma and faith deconstruction?
All the easy questions
Yeah.
first.
Yes, obviously.
So, yeah,
I have a habit of like double and triple barreling questions for people, so
I do
apologies.
that too. No, I do it too. So, I'm Anne Russo. I am a licensed therapist here in the United States, in New York on Seneca land.
Mm.
I am also a theologian, I suppose. Yes, I have a master's in theology, so
Mhm.
that makes me a theologian. And I run a private group practice here in the States. And I'm now writing a book through PESI that talks about religious trauma. But what brought me here truly is I was raised in a non monogamous household.
Mm.
Growing up, I just didn't know what that was exactly. And there wasn't really a term for it. I just knew that we were an alternative family, but
Yeah.
we were a family that was quiet about our existence,
Mm.
And as I got older, I realized that monogamy doesn't work for a lot of people, but people don't have the language, they
Mm.
don't have the understanding. So we see just a lot of challenges around monogamy.
Mm.
So I jumped into it as an educator and an advocate for therapists
Mm.
specifically to understand that all relationships are not monogamous
Yeah.
and that we need to know how to work with folks that are in different types of relationship styles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what might be really helpful before we sort of like get into the crux of the actual questions and the content of the episode is a little bit of some definitions because this might be a space that somebody might have absolutely no idea about. I think most people sort of know what monogamy is, but we're going to define it anyway, because just to sort of, make it abundantly clear. So I guess the four things that come to mind that typically get used in this space and that might get brought up in this episode that I'll get you to define is monogamy, the acronyms of E&M and C&M, which typically will be used interchangeably sometimes. So ethical non-monogamy or consensual non-monogamy, and polyamory and how that might be different to E&M.
Okay, sounds good. Let's do it. So, so
I'm a dive
monogamy.
straight in kind of
No,
person.
I love it. No, I love it. And I think that it is so important that
Yeah.
you're bringing this up because we can even talk around some of these terms,
Yeah.
right? So monogamy, two people in a committed. I this is, you know what, actually, Sam, I want to take this a step further because I'm going to define monogamy as I understand it, but I don't feel like monogamy is ever really truly defined
Mhm.
because it's the go-to,
Yes.
right? So everyone just says, "Oh, I'm monogamous," but we don't really talk about what does that mean. So
Mhm.
when I think of monogamous, I'm thinking of a sexual, emotional, physical agreement between two people to have a romantic relationship.
Mhm. And only with each other.
And only with each other,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
And only with each other, yes. When we use the terms ethical non monogamy or consensual non monogamy, we're talking about people agreeing to have a different structure that may involve one or more additional folks. And those structures look so vastly different. And I think that's the point that you're trying to make. And in these spaces too, many folks don't like the term consensual or ethical.
Mm.
And it's because there's this assumption that if we're saying non monogamy, that we have to say that it's ethical or consensual, when in fact, just the term itself, non monogamy, already tells you and
Mm.
should tell you that these people are consensual and
Yes.
ethical. So why do we have to add that on top of
Mhm.
it? Right.
Yeah.
And then polyamory, I mean, I think of it as just two people dating. See, and this is the thing, like there's so many vast ways of explaining
Hmm.
things.
Yeah.
So so I like to use the term alternative relationship styles
Hmm.
because I feel like that says, okay, it's not monogamous,
Mm.
they're doing something different than monogamy. What does that mean? And I feel like it gives empowerment to all folks. But granted, in my work I do say E&M
Yeah.
because for obvious reasons, right? But I do like alternative relationship styles because they're different than what
Mm.
we're told is the norm
Yeah.
for us humans,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. And I think even within the non-monogamous community, um, people will use terms interchangeably anyway, and it's less. I think sometimes we can get hung up on labels, and I'm not usually one for definitions or labels or anything like that. But for people who are new to this space, sometimes definitions are needed to understand what we're talking about,
Yes.
so that they can go into the rest of the episode feeling a little bit more informed. But even these terms will be used interchangeably. My wife and I are polyamorous, but we will use E&M in certain spaces and poly in other spaces. And
Mm.
it is just, it's less about the label and more about the dynamic that is present in that relationship.
It, and how are you defining your relationship as polyamory versus E&M, if you don't mind me
Yeah.
asking?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, we sort of just use them interchangeably, but we initially started using E&M as terminology because it was at the time descriptive of how we sort of came to the conclusion that actually we think monogamy is pretty fucking shit and overrated. Um, but and we were like, actually, I'm pretty sure we can do this far more ethically and far more better. And so we kind of just like came to that, and it was the term that we heard as well when we sort of started deconstructing monogamy. So it was kind of just the term that we latched onto at the time. And then over time, we've realized that actually that feels a little constrictive as well. And polyamory allows us to have the flexibility for our dynamic, our non-monogamy dynamic in our relationship
Mm.
to evolve and change into different spaces over time. And so depending on where we're at in our life and what our needs are at the time. So I think polyamory just became a much more expansive term once
Mm.
we started exploring it more fully and had more of an understanding of what we wanted that to look like for us. So yeah. Um,
I love that.
yeah.
I know, I love that. I love that because what you just said is everything.
Mm,
Expansive, and
mm,
for what it means for the two of you as you navigate relationship and life
yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it.
Mhm. Yeah. So, I mean, I think a good place to start in this, because obviously a significant portion, I mean, it's a religious trauma and faith deconstruction podcast. So, most of my listeners, most of the stories that I've had on the podcast have grown up in high control faith spaces or in fundamental
Mhm.
faith or cult spaces. And
Mhm.
monogamy is the default. It's the only acceptable relationship structure. It was the only acceptable relationship structure for my wife and I, which is why we automatically were in a monogamous relationship for, I think it was about the first 6 years of our relationship. And so I'm wondering, with that good old-fashioned Masters of Theology, which, to be fair, makes you far more of a theologian than half of the people running the churches, I feel like. So, um, how is monogamy framed in those high control spaces for people who've perhaps not really put any or too much thought into that?
It comes back to, unfortunately, the subjugation of women in many ways and taking away power from women. So if you go back and you really read, as fun as this is for listeners, like the church fathers, and like you read like the actual primary sources, you see the way that women are spoken about
Mm,
versus the way that men are spoken about. So women really are property owned. They're the dirt under your heel.
mm,
They're temptresses while also needing to be virgins. So we're kind of coming out of that framework.
mm,
And as time goes on, I mean, women are just consistently viewed as less than.
mm,
So the marriage structure is really put in place from a religious perspective to control women.
mm.
And I mean, we can talk about, land. We can, I mean, there's so many moving pieces, but it all is about control,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah,
So, and women being less than men.
mm, yeah. What have you seen in terms of like why it is the only acceptable relationship structure? Because as we know in these spaces, marriage is put on a pedestal. It is like it's
Mm-hmm.
the bee's knees, it's the gold standard, it's what you're supposed to get to. But there are the caveats, which is that it has to be a monogamous and a heterosexual relationship, marriage. So,
Sure. So, and I find that interesting too. Like, I can say, like, like if we look at like the idea of Adam and Eve, or the way that specifically the Bible speaks about marriage, yoking one man yokes with one woman, another Christian. Like it's very much like this is the way we do things, and we do this to have kids, and we procreate, and we make
mm,
more Christians, and so it is biblically founded.
mm,
But at the same time, I want to say, which is interesting, is you find a lot of non-monogamy in the Bible as well,
yeah,
which is really very interesting, right?
yeah,
But it's kind of that's kind of looked at as, oh, that's how things were done with those people, and it's always a man
mm,
with many wives, right?
mhm, yeah,
So again, we're back to that misogyny, patriarchal perspective. So I mean, so it's so just like monogamy is the gold standard. This is God's design for us. Man joins woman, right? Let's ignore the polyamory that was going on in the Bible. But if we do, that was what they did back then to create more Christians,
mm,
right? Or more faithful of Yahweh. And we've just inherited this belief system and this tradition through all these years. I mean,
mm,
and you see it in all kinds of religious and cultural spaces. I mean, clearly, right? This idea
yeah,
of monogamy. And yet it doesn't seem to work very well for at least half of the population. I want
Yeah.
to say more. There's a significant issue
Yeah.
there with doctrinal beliefs and actual human nature.
Mm. Yeah. I'm not even sure that there is probably a portion of the population that wouldn't even necessarily know whether it would work for them because they're too terrified to even consider that anything outside of monogamy could actually be healthy and attachment based and stable and all of that. So I think it's really tricky to even work out whether someone is open to it or enjoys non-monogamy when, anything other than monogamy is just the automatic default and not just the default is the acceptable right, I think, as well as the other thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting what you're saying here because even going beyond just, could this work for me? It's
Mm.
demonized just the mere thought.
Yes.
I had a class that I posted. It was a class specifically a continuing education course for therapists to
Mm,
learn how to work with clients in non-monogamous relationships.
mm,
This was probably the most popular post I ever posted. And guess what? You're going to hell. You're a horrible person. I can't
mm.
believe you're doing this. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And I just hate it. And I thought to myself, my gosh, I'm offering a class for therapists to help people
Mm,
in these relationships already, like navigate them and have the right language to help these clients. And I'm demonized. And
mm.
then I started thinking about what that must be like for a person to come out as non monogamous in this world. Holy heck.
Yeah. Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yes. I mean,
Right?
and which is,
Truly.
yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely, pun intended and necessary because it's a very real aspect because the belief around monogamy in faith communities, as soon as someone starts to question that, even just like you said, the mere thought of that, what impact does that have on someone's sense of identity and their self-worth in just as a human in the world?
Yeah. And I really, the more I study and the more that I learn, non-monogamy is not a choice. And I want to say it like this.
Mm,
Can you make the choice to be in a monogamous relationship? Sure,
mm,
miserably,
hmm.
because who you are is not that. Now,
Yeah.
there might be some people who I'm curious if this is me. I want to explore this, and I understand that, or this didn't work for me. But some people inherently
Mm,
are not capable and don't want to be monogamous.
yeah.
So so in those situations, like what do you do? Like
Mm,
you're like come out to your fam. I mean, how do you even begin to navigate some of those spaces?
yeah.
And the challenge behind that, and then needing when you do, if you choose to do that, if it feels safe for you, having a therapist who can support that process of coming out.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that brings up a really good point because I think a lot of people, even within the community, will have differing opinions as to whether non-monogamy is an identity marker like sexuality. We now, well, I say we now know, but most people know that sexuality is not a choice. There's still the subsect
Mm-hmm.
people who think it is, but we know that it's not. And there are some people who think that non-monogamy is a lifestyle choice as opposed to based on what they value and what they believe about the world and how they choose to show up in the world as opposed to an identity marker. And so, what are your thoughts about that?
I think it can be both.
Yeah,
I really do,
yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Because it's the I want to be expansive. I want to try this. I want to see if this works for me versus I don't know how to be anything but this.
yeah, yeah.
So it, it, and then I would also, and would want to say this to the listeners, whether it's their identity or a choice, don't people have the right to live a life that feels
Mm.
happy and healthy for them.
Yeah.
No one's forcing anybody else to do anything. This is a personal decision or identity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I typically will also have the argument that people who are monogamous are choosing to be monogamous, right? And yes, they might be
Mm-hmm.
choosing it based on conditioning they received or indoctrination or just, secular society beliefs. There's still a choice there for them to, we'll see it in movies or read it in books where they have the conversation around like, are we exclusive? And all of that sort of language that we see. And essentially, in that language, they are just saying, are you not going to screw around with somebody else? Are we going to
Mm-hmm.
be monogamous? And
Yes.
so there is still a choice there that even people who are monogamous are making, even if it's not a conscious, this is what we're making.
It's interesting that you just said that because, you know, human beings, I mean, we do know that we are not naturally monogamous species. Otherwise, we'd be with the first person we were ever sexual with and not desire others. I mean, that is just biological.
Mm,
So we are making a conscious choice. And some of us, I think we can be outliers to that as we see with other identities. So there might be some people that's like, yes, I've mated with you.
mm,
That's the end of it. I feel nothing for anybody else. Right. But it is interesting that we frame monogamy as like the standard. This is what I am. This is my identity. This we're all like this. When in fact, the total opposite is true.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I would agree that I think it can be both an identity marker or a choice. Like I said, my wife and I were
Mm-hmm.
monogamous for about 6 years of our relationship and marriage, and we were not miserable by any means. We were
Mm-hmm.
just
Yeah,
doing what
yeah.
we had always thought we had to do, and not miserable, but we made a choice to do something different once we realized actually we just don't particularly like this concept anymore. But I think even just like if we actually start sort of, I guess, talking about what that deconstructing monogamy looks
Mm-hmm.
like, what do you see as typically like the struggles that people go through when they do start challenging those deeply ingrained ideas about relationships and monogamy?
Religion is always number one. That is always the most difficult part for people to deconstruct. So that's its own,
Mm,
almost its own separate entity, just deconstructing sexuality in general and relationship styles in general. And because of the way that non monogamy has really been demonized, people have a very narrow and scary perspective of what it might mean.
yeah.
Sanctioned cheating, you're going to be
Mm,
lying, I'm going to feel upset, I could never do such a thing, I'm going to be jealous.
mm,
And like there's just so how do we do this? Oh, we're doing this because we're unhappy in our relationships. I mean, there's so and it's never it the deconstruction is never really around the potential joy. It's
mm,
always around these fears, these deep fears of what this could mean based on this narrative that's not accurate.
mm,
So what I do with my clients is we do a deep dive into self. Like we don't even need to talk about monogamy or non-monogamy.
mm,
You know, I when I run groups for people open to exploring non-monogamy or want to explore it with their partners, typically it's people that are opening up a relationship.
mm,
We don't talk about non-monogamy very much. We actually talk about what works for you in relationships. What are your values? What are your like how do you already show up in a relationship? What's your communication look like? What's your sex drive? What's their sex? How do you envision your needs being met? Are you like so it's like these are much bigger conversations
mm,
that take place, and then we start to look at how can we start to explore what non-monogamy means, and that is a really different answer
mm,
for everybody.
mm.
And that's the beauty too, isn't it though, Sam? Because you can, if you are able to communicate to that level with your partner or partners,
Mm.
you can. shift and change, and you should shift and change because you're going to grow and you're going to learn new things, and something might work for you or not work for you. it, that's normal for any relationship.
Mm.
Non-monogamy is giving you the permission to be authentic about the challenges of being in relationship
Mhm.
and learning how to communicate instead of, sadly, you this structure of monogamy, and everyone just follows this structure without even thinking about what it means
Mm.
or how they do. It's like, well, I just do it because this is how you do it. But communication skills, needs and wants, I feel like those things really get missed a lot.
Mm.
But I've also found sometimes people will come back and say, you know what, non-monogamy right now doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And it's not and it's not working for me because of this and this. So at this time I need to put a pause. I need to look at this within myself. That is amazing.
Yeah.
This is about a learning journey more than it's about a relationship structure being stamped on your forehead.
Yeah, we don't want another rule book, right? Like,
Exactly. Yes.
we don't want, and
Yes.
that's kind of like the opposite of what we want.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it takes a person who is willing to do hard work within themselves
Mm.
to find success
Yeah.
in non-monogamy. Truly, I do believe that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think typically, I talk a lot about faith deconstruction with people and on the podcast and things like that. And there is an unlearning process, but typically it
Mm-hmm.
does often come back to what do I think? What do I value? What do I believe about the world? What do I believe about myself? And all of those different aspects. Um, but what does I mean, I know that that process looks pretty similar when deconstructing monogamy, but there are some added difficulties, particularly if you might be deconstructing and your partner is not.
Yes, absolutely. I don't want to say this, but that might be a challenge for that relationship to truly survive.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a different conversation when you have one person who is deconstructing their faith versus the other person, because often, we can allow, that mixed belief system to coexist in a relationship, providing values are still the same and all of those sorts of like core foundational aspects. It's a lot trickier when deconstructing monogamy because it can change the way that you value the structure and foundation of your relationship. And that is really difficult.
It is. And I have seen folks navigate this by, there is still deconstruction that is going on here for sure, but I have seen relationships where one person chooses to remain monogamous,
Yeah. Yeah. A mixed
and
monogamy relationship.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yes, this is monogamy works for me independently of you.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, I see it as this amazing tapestry of possibility
Mm.
if people could just have the conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And it doesn't look the same. It doesn't look the same necessarily for partners choosing to open up, for an individual who's choosing to be non-monogamous, who has several partners that are not hierarchical,
Mm.
which mean and what I really love now too is, this is something that I didn't see when I was younger and growing up in this space, is there is a real uh, support for the outlier. And what I mean by that is, if a couple opens up, okay, well, we're going to open up a relationship and we want to see about bringing in someone else into a relationship. Before, it was like that person almost wasn't a person,
Mm.
they were like a kink or a fantasy.
Mm.
And now I see that in this space, it's the understanding that everyone involved, no matter what position you may be in,
Mm.
has thoughts, feelings, ideas, needs, and wants, and everyone should be considered equally. And I really, really love that because, yeah, we're all people here. Like, no one's tossed aside, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Absolutely.
something I've seen changing in the space a lot.
Yeah. From everything that I have seen with either couples that I know or partnerships that I know, or in client relationships, is that
Mm-hmm.
the couples who have mixed monogamy relationship structures have superhuman communication and boundary skills. Like they're next level
Yeah,
good. Even for a relationship
yeah.
therapist, they are next level good. But they, not everybody likes a half and half pizza, but it can be done and it can
No.
be done well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
it's just about knowing the boundaries and having like insanely good communication skills. Nothing is impossible, I don't think. So, but what have you found the most difficult thing for people to unlearn during this process of deconstructing monogamy?
Possessiveness.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, there is this underlying belief that we own who we're married to or who we're partnered with, even if we don't mean to do that.
Mm,
And that possessiveness comes with oftentimes a jealousy or insecurity around the relationship.
yeah.
And that is tough.
Yeah.
And I wonder sometimes, if when we're all living that so much, even in non-monogamous spaces, and we're like, we got this, we're good. Those feelings can still pop up, and we still have to look at those feelings. So I feel like that is a journey that I think is pretty continuous and may surprise you when it pops up. It doesn't mean that non-monogamy won't work for you, but I think that is a challenging piece of the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think
What
it's a
about
really,
you?
yeah, I think the biggest thing that we had to comprehend and sort of like unlearn was this idea that and this like idea of soulmates, and that you had one person that was, designed for you that would meet all of your needs. And then we kind of went, actually, that's really fucking unhealthy and really unrealistic to think that one person
Yes.
is going to be able to meet absolutely all of your needs. Like that is just a shit
Yes.
ton of pressure that neither of us wanted. And
Yeah.
so, but you are taught, particularly in the faith of both of our origins, that there is this one person that God has designed for you, that you are supposed to spend the rest of your life with. And I think that was, I mean, we were both pretty lucky in that we had deconstructed quite a lot of stuff already before we had hit this point. So, we didn't necessarily have all of the underlying fear of like what is going to happen to us if we start thinking about this. But there was still a lot of unlearning to do around some of those ingrained beliefs around relationships and soulmates and all of that sort of thing. So, um, yeah, but I always get really interested and confused when people use jealousy as a reason that monogamy and non-monogamy can't work, because I'm like, I've seen far more jealousy in monogamous relationships than
Mm-hmm.
non-monogamy. Like, jealousy is just an emotion that needs to be understood. It's not like it doesn't have to be a problem. There's jealousy in every relationship,
Yeah.
irrespective of how many people are in that relationship. So, it's just about like, where is this coming from and how do we understand it and how do we move through it? So, yeah.
And so important to that saying that because with therapists, unfortunately, I've heard so many therapists say to clients, maybe it's not for you because you're jealous.
Yeah.
And that is just harmful to this client,
Mm,
So that's why that training piece is, I think, is
yeah.
so important.
Yeah.
What I really like that you said is this idea of soulmate. I just can't help but think about friendships,
Yeah.
and you can have these deep bonds with people, and it doesn't take away from a bond from another person.
Mm,
We love and connection is not finite, it is an infinite thing. we put, as soon as it seems like sex is involved in some way, or a certain type of connection,
Mm.
all of a sudden it becomes bad or wrong,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And that's something that I'm trying to deconstruct more myself, is why, what is it about, what makes it different? I have three very, very close friends. I love them all so much. Everyone's okay with everybody. I'm having sex with two of them. They're upset. Like, I'm trying to understand, what is that? What's going on there, you know?
Yeah.
And if I think if we can just recognize too, like you were saying, like the pressure
Mm.
that gets put on people, we're not, again, we're not, this is not how we're even built. Like,
Mm.
even if we, again, remove monogamy, like, or non-monogamy, like, we are social creatures who function together.
Yeah.
So how are we supposed to say,
Mm.
you need to support me in every single possible way in
Mm.
my entire life? Go.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. Um,
Yeah.
I blame all of our shitty misconceptions and shame around sex on purity culture. I'm pretty sure it got and patriarchy, but I mean purity culture is rooted in patriarchy, so they're kind of one and the same. But I'm kind of like I'm pretty sure purity culture is to blame for this generation's shame and misconceptions around sex in relationships. But um, I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
I mean,
What?
you're speaking to my clients right now
Yeah.
as you're talking. I mean, this is
Yeah.
real. This is, and it runs deep, and you don't even, they walk around like it's not there in the world.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And then when you come into therapy and you see just how many people have been truly impacted
Yeah.
by this, it's astonishing.
Yeah. Absolutely. How can people, or what does it look like for people to start to create a new framework for their relationships once they have, they're in that process of unlearning the beliefs and deconstructing it, and they want to be able to create a new framework that feels authentic to them? What does that look like for people typically?
It looks like, first, very separate work,
Mm.
really understanding who you are as an individual. What do you value? What do you need? What do you want? And how do you want to show up?
Mm.
That's another important piece. And I think that can get lost.
Yeah.
How how can you show up in a relationship? How do you want to show up in a relationship?
Mm.
And then from there, we bring in, so typically I'll be speaking as though a couple's opening up a relationship. Bring in the other couple and we'll slowly start to talk about these things, and what do they mean, and what do they see as a possibility, and if they have an ideal scenario, or there's lots of there's a lot of different things to talk through. It can be, well, I just want to be able to have sex with other people. Okay, well, what does that mean exactly? Does it mean friends are included in this?
Mm.
Does it mean it's just strangers? Does it mean you have sex with this person more than once? Do you
Mm.
have it at your house where you share with your partner? I mean, so it's like we really are like digging very deeply into what seems right for them, with the caveat of, you may try this particular thing and it doesn't work,
Yeah.
and you have to maybe go back and talk and explore again. So
Mm.
it takes a great sense of self-awareness in these therapy sessions, and a great deal of, what I want to use, feeling empowered in your own consent
Mm.
and your own needs too. Like, there should never be a situation where you buckle under the pressure of someone else's needs and wants, because that's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I see that, and it doesn't work.
Yeah. I typically will sometimes play what I call the what if game, where I'm just like, we're just going to go, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? And what if it's this person? And what if I feel like this? And we play the what if game, not to just like pull everything apart, but to just be able to come up with all of the different things so that we can reach a place of what am I comfortable with? Like, what boundaries do we need to be able to make this work? And I always will put in the caveat of what boundaries do we have or do we need right now? Because we need the space for those to evolve and change once we start actually doing whatever it is we now want to do and live. And they need to be able to evolve.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
only because I have the permission of my parents will I share this, because I think that it's very interesting. So watching my parents be non-monogamous,
Mm.
um, I I'm gonna I was raised with my mom, my dad, and my dad's partner
Mm.
until I was 14, and then my dad and his partner from then on, and they're celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary this Sunday,
Oh,
actually.
beautiful.
But they've been, yeah, so they've been non-monogamous, pretty much my whole life, and I've watched this very interesting evolving take place. My dad is not. It's not about sex for my dad.
Mm.
It's about an emotional connection that may or may not involve a sexual relationship.
Mm.
And I think that that's neat, because it's like I have these deep intimate connections with people that could create jealousy or insecurity if this were a monogamous relationship. So this becomes a non-monogamous relationship because of the level of connection, while his partner is more geared towards, or was, because they've evolved, more geared towards, you know um sex clubs, or gyms and things of that nature, where it was like, I don't want an emotional connection.
Yeah.
So it's like, but that took a lot of conversation, and as time has gone on, they've shifted a lot. Maybe someone dated someone for 10 years, or like my dad had another partner for like 15 years
Mm.
that he would see not very regularly,
Mm.
but it was a deep partnership that fulfilled something within him that his live-in partner didn't fulfill for him.
Mm.
So it was their ability to communicate, and they had very strong compersion.
Mm.
And that, being, for listeners, is finding joy and your partner having joy with other partners or other experiences. And because that compersion was so strong, it was like, I don't even know how to explain to you. Like, I remember hanging out with my dad and his partner, and they each had another partner, and the five of us went out to go eat, and it was just so loving and kind, and it was a little family,
Mm.
and it was just such a positive experience, because of where how these people were able to just be so open and so authentic and so loving and so respectful
Yeah.
of one another.
Mm. And I think one of the things that I wanted to talk about in this episode was misconceptions that people have around non-monogamous relationships. And I think that that's a nice lead into one of those, which is that um, non-monogamy is just going to fuck up the kids, right? Like you can't have kids in non-monogamy spaces. It's just going to screw them up. And so as a kid of a non-monogamous family, how do
Mm-hmm.
you feel about that? And what do you say to those people and that rubbish misconception?
Mm-hmm. Non-monogamy does not screw up kids. What screws up kids is being told by others that non-monogamy is wrong,
Yeah.
and feeling the rejection and the stigmatization from society. Growing up, my family, I mean, of course, like every family, you have ups and downs and personality traits that you're like, eh.
Yeah.
But as a unit, there was a lot of love in my family unit. Like, I didn't think there was anything wrong with the way that I was raised, with lots of different people and strong connections. Like, I think it's a wonderful thing.
Mm.
What I think can harm a child is if a parent, and I know this is tough.
Yeah.
I know that it's tough, not being honest.
Mm. Yeah.
Be, because if a child finds out, because monogamy is the norm,
Mm.
if a child finds out by accident, they can make assumptions around people are cheating, people don't love each other. Those children are receiving the same messages. So
Yeah.
that can be a very scary, hard, traumatizing place for a kid.
Mm.
So I think it's very important to age appropriately, be honest about what that structure is for your family, and that it doesn't mean that that's the structure they have to follow, but that's how we do it. But I think if you teach children how to be um, healthy human beings and honor themselves and respect others and learn how to communicate in healthy ways, like that's a great example.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know, the issue is not whether you're non-monogamous or monogamous. The issue is how are partners treating each other? How are they communicating with each other? And what are they showing the children?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we are slowly seeing the importance, or parents seeing the importance of highlighting diversity for kids growing up, irrespective of whether they're seeing that diversity in their own home, but just because there is diversity in the next home, perhaps, or in the
Yes.
homes of their friends. And you're right, I typically will use the same analogy for queer people, which is that it's not that they think it's wrong, or it's that the way that society treats them or tells them that it's wrong. And so I love that you use the same analogy for kids in, you know, non-monogamous homes, that they're not taught that it's wrong. They don't think that it's wrong. They're struggling with the fact that other people are telling them that it's wrong. And
Yeah.
so I think that's important for people to understand, particularly for parents who might have kids who are in a monogamous home, but it doesn't mean that they don't know other kids who are not in non-monogamous homes. So, yeah,
Exactly. At the end of the day, who are the players in the game, not how many players are in the game, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What other misconceptions have you seen about non-monogamous relationships?
Oh, the people that are non monogamous cannot stay committed.
Yes.
That is a huge, yes, that's a huge, that totally have a problem. They can't commit to one person, or they can't commit. I think that's very funny, actually,
Mm.
because there's such a level of commitment that has to go into non monogamy.
Yeah, it's like
It
commitment on
they might
steroids.
be yes, right? It might be different levels of commitment,
Yeah.
but like those are agreed upon levels of commitment between you and the people that you're making that commitment with, and
Yeah.
you're like there to do that. And
Mm.
so I think it's exactly, it's commitment on steroids.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I will often hear or see is that, like you sort of said, it's just sanctioned cheating, like you are just giving someone permission to cheat, or it's you just want to slut around. And typically that's said to the women, obviously, or the, female
Yes.
identifying partners. And
Yes.
typically to that I say, well, if you want to slut around, go for it. Just do it safely. And like if that's
Yes.
part of what non-monogamy looks like for you, great. We love that. But I think there is this misconception that that is what all non-monogamy looks like. And that's really harmful because, like you said, sometimes it can be about creating emotional connections. And I mean, asexual people can be non-monogamous, right? And there's no sex
Yes.
involved. And
Yep.
so, or, I think it is just this misconception that, again, everything in relationships just revolves around sex.
Yes. Yes, exactly. I love that you said if you want to slut around, go for it. Just be safe.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Just be safe. Just be off. Just be honest. Like anytime that a person is using power
Mm.
to harm somebody, no matter what kind of relationship style you're in, we got a problem, right? But I've seen non-monogamous people be the most safe,
Hmm.
the most honest, and very difficult conversations, the most willing to work on themselves, the most willing to repair rupture.
Yeah.
So if even if you're choosing to not be non-monogamous, I'd say still learn all about the skill sets that non-monogamous people
Yeah.
use because it's really, really powerful in
Mm.
relationships and creating happy, healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Like you can apply that to your sister, you know what I mean? Like, like it's just
Yeah.
a phenomenal way to communicate and learn how to share and experience life. I love it.
Yeah. I mean the core components of any relationship, whether it's with a sibling, a colleague, a romantic partner, around, healthy, open, transparent communication, respect, values, boundaries, all of those things, irrespective of the type of relationship, are needed. It's just that typically I see that those who are non-monogamous just do it far better because I mean, they have to. Like, we have to be
Yes.
able to do it better because there
Yes.
are more in the game, so to speak, sometimes. And so you have to be able to have that open communication. And I think sometimes to combat those misconceptions, it is coming back to values. Like if somebody says to
Yes.
me that they value sexual freedom, that might be colloquially, they want to slut around. Great. What does that
Yeah.
look like? How do we do that in
What
a
is it?
way that it honors both of you and it's safe and consensual? Equally, someone might value emotional freedom and emotional connection or intellectual connection. Great. What does that look like? Um,
Yes.
but yeah, I think there is this misconception or like I mean, I think it's also a misconception based in stigma around what
Mhm.
non-monogamous relationships look like. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think going back to one of the other things that you said around jealousy, I think that's also another one. Yeah.
A great book that I read, Polysecure.
Knew you were going to bring that up.
Lovely. Yeah,
It's so good.
because truly
Yeah.
an incredible book, whether or not you are interested in non-monogamy or not, it's just so beautiful in the way that she describes healthy attachment
Mm-hmm.
in relationships. And she does it through the lens of non-monogamy. But I think if you have ideas or stereotypes or you're feeling kind of an ick just listening to this conversation because it just doesn't fit into your system and your
Yeah.
value system, check out this book. It will
Yeah.
give an interesting new perspective.
Absolutely. And I think if you are a therapist out there working with relationships or with couples, I think Polysecure and Polywise, which is her other book, I think that's mandatory reading, to be honest,
Yeah.
because I think if you only are applying attachment theory to not to monogamous relationships, it's easy to think that you can't create secure attachment in a non-monogamous relationship, but you absolutely can. So as much as I love our other founding people in relationship spaces and relationship therapy spaces, there are some gaps in that in terms of, diverse relationship structures. And so, yeah, Jessica Fern's books are a top tier in terms of understanding
Yeah.
how that applies out in real relationships from someone who is also, she is also not monogamous. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's mandatory reading for people in terms of working in this space, particularly as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How do you see shame show up? Because shame and religious trauma and religious spaces are just kind of like intertwined. They're one and the same. But in this space, anything that's not monogamous is pretty taboo sometimes. So how do you see shame show up and play out once people are potentially trying to embrace a new relationship structure?
I see shame show up more in um, people assigned female at birth.
Yeah.
I don't really see it the other way. I never have. Now, of course, it doesn't mean
Mm,
that it doesn't exist, but in my practice, I've
mm,
worked with a lot of people. I see it there, and it's typically around the sex portion,
Yeah.
the idea of having sex with another person, or how to have sex, or I mean, there it's just the sexuality is
Mm.
just steeped in shame.
Yeah.
It's and shame being I am wrong,
Mm.
not this is wrong.
Yeah.
And I like to make that clarification because it runs deep into your being.
Mm.
So I do see that, and there's a lot of unlearning that has to take place there, and it takes a lot of work and continuous work because it has a way of rearing its ugly head because
Yeah.
it's just so embedded in our DNA,
Mm-hmm.
so it's really taking steps and being and learning how to be safe even within your own body,
Mm-hmm.
being safe within exploring autoeroticism, and just opening yourself up to different sexual experiences that with people that you feel safe with, because that's very important for the female brain sexually. Safety is like everything
Yeah.
for the female brain.
Yeah.
So working in spaces like that can really start to help alleviate, and being able to talk about those feelings too is really important. But it's definitely something that I don't know if you ever get over exactly, but I think it can lessen
Mm.
and lessen a great deal. It doesn't impact, you may think, oh, I remember this feeling, or oh, but it's not holding you and owning you
Mm.
like it may have in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even from my own perspective, there are, and I use the term slut around very strategically because it is a terminology that I've had to reclaim because obviously it's
Yes.
it's automatically got a stigma attached to it that for somebody who identifies as female to have sex with multiple people automatically tarnishes who they are as a human. And that's crap, just for anybody who might
Yep.
still be thinking that.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean, like you said, I would probably also agree that I think anyone who is assigned female at birth is typically impacted more so in this space, and I think we can probably just have like a very quick thanks to patriarchy and purity culture again because they're kind of the reasons why
Yep.
that and even in secular society, men who sleep around are, studs and, all of that sort of thing, and women who sleep around are sluts. So it is just this gross language and stigma around um, what makes you a good human with integrity and dignity, and how you use your body sexually has got absolutely nothing to do with that. So, but it can be such a pervasive part of trying to create something authentic for you in any
Yeah.
space, but particularly in this space as well. Especially, I think, if one of those values is sexual freedom, it
Yeah.
adds a layer of
Yeah.
um, complexity to it. Yeah.
And I run right back to those writings in the first century,
Mm,
those religious, because that set the stage for
yeah.
all of this.
Yeah. How do you?
And people don't realize. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
no, no, go. That's fine.
I was just going to say that people don't even know just how intensely negative female sexuality was steeped in the formation of religion, especially the Abrahamic faith.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage people to actually like look at it.
Mm,
And you have to see what this is where the beliefs come from. I mean, I think you can still have faith if you're a faithful person, but understand who said what, where, and why, and how is that impacting the way that you view yourself or sexuality today.
yeah.
Is that of God, or is that of a man that was writing,
Mm,
creating a faith system, in 100 AD?
yeah. Absolutely. Anytime I'm working with someone around shame, I typically will encourage them to use the idea of like whose voice is this
Mm,
internally, and that typically can lead us down a very good path to tell us actually it's not your voice, it's the voice of
yes.
whoever it is. But we've talked a lot about, I guess, the difficult part of, or the misconceptions or the challenges of being in a non-monogamous relationship. But what about the fun and the joyous and the expansive nature of embracing non-monogamy as well? What have you seen in people who have deconstructed and embraced non-monogamy and the beauty that has come from that?
A client statement just rings in my head when you say that. She said, Anne, I have never worked so hard at understanding myself,
Mm.
and I feel so happy and clear about who I am. And
Yeah.
I hadn't had that before,
Mm.
and a freedom to exist authentically,
Mm.
to not feel stuck or trapped in something that doesn't work or make sense for you, and creates mental health issues and
Mm.
physical health issues because it's not you.
Yeah.
I see so much joy. I see joy with the level of conversations that people have and the things that they learn and the places they explore. I mean, it opens up an entirely new world that is authentically for them.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I think,
And it,
we said at the beginning that obviously, starting to even unpack this can create issues of self-worth. And I would say that embracing this, if that works for you, can increase levels of self-worth as well.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. The more that you understand yourself and can and speak up for yourself
Mm.
and cause no harm to others,
Mm.
what a wonderful way to live.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
mean, from a random little side note is there's a lot of really wonderful people out there. There's a lot of shit people, but there's also a lot of really wonderful people, and it's just really fucking fun. So like,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah. Yes.
if everybody is on the same page and everybody is like happy and consensual and it is, there's good boundaries in place, it just is really fun. And, so I think there's that also. Like,
I love that.
yeah. And also there is you just see the diversity of humankind as well, and I think that's really beautiful. And you see that other people actually can bring out different parts of you as well that the person you might have begun with didn't. And that's not something that they lacked. It's just the beauty of differing connections with different people. So um, I want to sort of shift gears to the people around in terms of like family and friends of those who are in non-monogamous relationships. What is the most supportive thing that they can do for those people, particularly if they are in a transition period or if they're struggling to understand this, concept, so to like in air quotes, of non-monogamy?
Do you love the person? Do you love that person who's exploring non monogamy?
Mm.
If you love that person, all you have to do is continue to love them.
Mm.
I mean, truly, like I feel like it's not that hard. It can be something like I don't understand, but I love you and I want you to be happy.
Mm.
I mean, or I want to learn more about this.
Mm.
I want to learn more about your life because I love you and I want you to be happy.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
mean, truly, like at the end of the day, it all to me, it always comes back to loving and supporting people as they do no harm
Mm.
and they're just trying to live their best life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there are so many wonderful resources. There's social media
Yes.
accounts, there's podcasts, there is books, there is memoirs, there's so many different resources out there where you can learn without having to ask your loved one to educate you.
Yeah.
That's all I find that's also really important.
Yeah.
And also like as I love using sarcasm as like a way to navigate life. But if you weren't asking them about their sex life before, like why start now? Like what makes now that you know that they might be having sex with multiple people, they might be having an emotional connection with more than one person. If you weren't already asking those questions, why now? Like what is sitting uncomfortably for you? And that's your stuff to work on, not
Yours.
theirs.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but yeah, I think there's so much information at our disposal to be able to educate ourselves and not expect other people to always be educating us.
Yes, yes, totally. I agree with you. And I think that it's important to invite their family or whatever that might look like into your space too.
Mm,
Just be the being aware. I mean, I guess I do always just come back to love and not in the space of non-judgment and letting people live, and they'll kind of let you know what they need. And if, like you said, if there's something that you don't understand, there are multiple resources. And what are you, yeah, why would you ask someone about their sex life anyway?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What is your top practical tip for practitioners who want to know how to be able to support clients other than going and reading the books that we've already mentioned?
Language.
Mm,
Language is very important. What do your intake forms look like?
mm,
What does your language and the consent forms look like? When you do the assessments, I just, when you are, how do you show someone that you're, even if you're not necessarily knowledgeable, but you're open to
mm,
people that are non monogamous, that they know they can at least tell you that without fear?
yeah.
Do you have books on your shelf that say
Mm.
that? And never, never say, I couldn't do that.
Oh,
Or how do you do that? Don't do that. That is a disaster. I've had more clients tell me that, and it destroyed the therapeutic alliance.
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
even just from when we decided to deconstruct monogamy, I was already working with relationship therapy at the time. But at the time, I referred to it as couples counseling, and I was like, "Oh, that's not going to work anymore." And that was
Mm-mm.
my own sort of that's what it was referred to when in my training
Yeah.
and things like that. But it can be very little subtle changes like that that can allow for space for diverse relationship structures. I mean, I'm also very explicit about working with that demographic as well. It's one of the reasons why I'm very open about our relationship structure because it allows a level of safety for people if they choose to engage with me as a practitioner. But yeah, I love the point around language. It can be such a subtle difference, a subtle change, but it can make a big difference to being open and showing that you have an openness around what might not be the default relationship structure. Yeah, I love that. I usually like to finish these episodes with some encouragement, and I usually have to rewire my normal last question for bonus episodes. So I'm going to ask you what you would say to someone who is fresh in challenging these beliefs around monogamy, but is interested in exploring a diverse relationship structure. What would you say to that person who is just really early on in that?
I know you're uncomfortable,
Mm.
and that is okay
Yeah.
because your brain has been wired a certain way. It has nothing to do with truth. It has nothing to do with right or wrong. It's just what you were learning, how you were wired, and rewiring and learning new things. literally feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Just keep learning.
Mm. Yeah. I love that. And I would add to that, which is that whilst ever you sit in the discomfort, you won't stay there. You will move through it.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes,
absolutely.
yes, you will.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining me, and
Oh,
thank
thank
you
you,
for the work
Sam.
in this space. I love having conversations I love having conversations with people all over the world, but particularly ones that might challenge some ingrained beliefs in people when they listen to the episode. So I'm looking forward to the amount of questions that I get from this episode. But
Feel free to send any my way.
yes, I was like, I do want to stress for people listening that if anybody does have questions, to reach out to one of us and ask the question. There is nothing wrong with asking a question, and it's just a learning opportunity to ask the question. So we love that. Yeah,
Yes.
amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Beyond the Surface. I hope you found today's conversation as insightful and inspiring as I did. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who might benefit from these stories. Stay connected with us on social media for updates and more content. I love connecting with all of you. Remember, no matter where you are in your journey, you're not alone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep moving forward. Take care.